We are live for the West Coast from the Kennedy Space Center in Florida, where history was launched tonight. America returning to the moon, Artemis taking off in spectacular fashion, and we have much more on the president's address on Iran and what it means for the future of the war. The awe-inspiring liftoff, the most powerful rocket to ever send humans into space. Artemis streaking across the Florida sky. 4 astronauts now on their way to history to circle the moon and go farther into space than any person has ever gone before. Crowds packing in to witness it all. We're here to bring you every breathtaking moment of it. Also tonight, the president's primetime address wrapping up moments ago. President Trump saying the war in Iran is nearly finished, but suggesting there's still 2 or 3 more weeks of airstrikes, and addressing rising gas prices. Our Kristen Welker standing by. History also at the Supreme Court. President Trump attending a hearing in person, a first for a sitting president, as justices weigh his push to end birthright citizenship. How the justices seem to be leaning. Getting treatment, Tiger Woods asking a judge to allow him to leave the country to seek treatment after that DUI arrest. The judge's decision tonight. A suspected stalker attacking Fleetwood Mac star Lindsey Buckingham. The disturbing details about the ambush. Another Ted Bundy victim? The chilling breakthrough in a 50-year-old murder case. How investigators linked a Utah teen's death to the infamous serial killer. Attack on the tracks, a man in Seattle nearly pushed in front of a moving train. The terrifying moment caught on camera. A groundbreaking new weight loss pill gets the green light from the FDA. How much you'll have to pay for it. And from here at the Kennedy Space Center, we're looking up at the astronauts now heading into space and into a new future. How the mission is getting the stage set to go to the moon, but then to Mars and beyond. Nightly News starts right now.
This is a special edition of NBC Nightly News. The return to the moon. Live from the Kennedy Space Center in Florida, here's Tom Llamas.
And good evening from the Kennedy Space Center. We're live on the West Coast for this historic night where behind me, a short time ago, we witnessed a moment for the ages as America began its return to the moon. And also tonight, just moments ago, the president laying out his plan to wind down the war in Iran, but offering very few new details. We'll get to that in a moment. But here in Florida, the ground may have stopped shaking after that powerful Artemis II liftoff, but the excitement around the launch has not faded. To feel the sheer power of that moment, just listen.
Good roll pitch. Roger, roll pitch.
And as we come to you live, Artemis II is now hurtling into space, carrying 4 astronauts on a 10-day mission that will take them farther from Earth than any human being in history. We watched today as hundreds of thousands packed the roadsides and beaches, witnessing that massive surge of power as the most powerful rocket ever built lifted off the pad. The crew now settling into their Orion spacecraft, beginning the first leg of a journey to loop the moon and reclaim America's lead in space exploration. It is the dawn of a new era, and we begin our coverage of that historic launch with our Tom Costello.
RS-25 engines lit. 4, 3, 2, 1. Booster ignition. And liftoff. The crew of Artemis II now bound for the moon. Humanity's next great voyage begins.
Roaring off Launch Pad 39B, the first human test flight of the Artemis generation.
Mission Control Houston seeing good performance.
Never before has a rocket so powerful lifted off from the Kennedy Space Center with humans on board.
Integrity, 3 miles in altitude. Traveling more than 1,200 miles per hour.
A staggering 8.8 million pounds of thrust. The Space Launch System, or SLS, accelerating to 17,000 miles per hour, pushing the Orion space capsule to a high Earth orbit. Outside the Space Center, huge crowds line the coast to witness a history-making climb into the heavens.
8 minutes, 40 seconds into the flight, we have a nominal main engine cutoff.
Strapped into Orion, Commander Reed Weissman, pilot Victor Glover, mission specialist Christina Cook, and Jeremy Hansen of the Canadian Space Agency. It was just after 1 p.m. when the crew suited up in their orange suits, played a traditional last card game to play out any bad hands.
And here they are, NASA's Artemis II crew.
then walked out to applause. And a final goodbye to family members at a distance to avoid any last-minute illness. Reed Weissman with his 2 daughters after losing his wife to cancer. Victor Glover with his wife and 4 daughters. Mission Specialist Christina Cook and her husband. And Canadian Mission Specialist Jeremy Hansen with his wife and 3 teenagers.
This is heartwarming. Look at how many people there are.
Thousands cheering the astronauts as they headed towards their rocket.
Pad 39B.
Arriving at the pad, all 4 rode the launch tower elevator.
And now we're watching the crew walk across the crew access arm.
Enter the white room, the crew even signing the new white wall for the first time ever before donning their helmets and gloves. Then climbing into Orion with technicians helping to buckle them into their seats. 4 hours later, blasting off the pad on a high-stakes rocket ride, charting a new course for NASA. A 10-day, 600,000-mile trip, laying the groundwork for landing astronauts on the moon and building a lunar base by the end of the decade.
And joining me now live here at the Kennedy Space Center, Al Roker, Tom Costello, and retired NASA astronaut Steve Robinson. I thank you all for being here. Tom, it was an incredible moment. It was historical. We felt it. It shook us. It shook the ground here. Yeah. But it's also incredibly important. This may have shaken up the space race in the world.
Oh, I don't think there's any doubt about that, because NASA, America, is betting on this technology to take Americans back to the moon before the Chinese, to be candid about it, before the Chinese build out a base and put their own astronauts on the moon. They want to do that by 2030. So there's this geostrategic imperative playing out here. But then in addition, essentially America and NASA wants to get back on the moon to go to Mars. You can't get to Mars simply by lifting off here at the Kennedy Space Center. You got to put a base on the moon, and then from there, you go on to Mars. That could be a decade or more. But tonight is the first step.
Tom Costello, we thank you for that. Steve, you have been there. You've been on 4 space missions, spent nearly 50 days in space, I think. What is going through the minds of the astronauts right now inside that capsule?
Well, I think they're saying, finally. They have been training for years and years for this, and they know that the hopes and dreams of the nation and the human race really is upon their shoulders. So they're excited to do what they're trained to do, and they're going to do the best they can. And these people, nobody could do it better than them.
They have been together for 3 years, working together. They know each other inside and out. They have become a family, and that's incredibly important, right? Because it is very tight in that Orion capsule.
It's hard to explain how tight that is, but I think some people in medical teams and military teams, and maybe submarines, kind of know what that's like.
Yeah, you have each other's back.
Have each other's back. You can finish each other's sentences. You can read each other's mind without saying things that you don't want to say to mission control, just by body movements. And it's very important to have that kind of level of communication. This is where humans really excel. Robotic spacecraft are really important and part of the mix. But when you send humans, you're going to get a better return on investment than if you don't, in my opinion.
Al, during our special coverage, you were talking about Apollo. We now have Artemis, and we have our first quote from the mission commander here. He says, "We have a beautiful moonrise. We're headed right at it."
Yeah, and that's the beauty of it. And, it speaks to their character that they named their vehicle, their capsule, Integrity, because that's what they believe in. They have each other's back, but they keep stressing, this is not about them. This is about humanity and taking that next step.
Right. And then, Al, you remember Apollo. You were talking about it so eloquently. Again, we live in a different world. We live in the era of the cell phone and social media, but this was still so incredible.
And that's the thing. This is, I was 15 when that happened. There was no internet. Everybody was there. They were watching their televisions, the 3 networks. That was it. Today, this has the capability of breaking through for people to say, you know what, we're all together in this. Let's watch together. Let's be together.
Put so well. Tom Costello, we have a few seconds left here. The next 2 to 3 hours are going to be critical. Explain to our viewers why.
Well, we are right where we're on the mission timeline right now, 33 minutes or so. We are past the most critical moments, but they're now going to try to make sure that they're at the right altitude so that they're high enough in an orbit around the Earth that then they can do that big maneuver. They're going to, in about 24 hours, head towards the moon. They're going to go up Mach 33, and essentially it'll be a big slingshot. So when they come back, they're going to be relying on that slingshot coming around the moon and being pulled back to Earth. So a lot is riding on this. So
and one
far,
more
so
separation, right? One more separation we're going to keep a close eyes on.
Yeah,
make sure that capsule takes off and then starts the journey around the Earth, as you said.
Orion's, that's right. Orion will be separating, and then it's on its way. It's clear and free. So far, this could not have gone better. By the way, the Orion capsule where these astronauts are in, it is about 33% bigger than Apollo. We talk a lot about Apollo. Yeah. It's very similar, but it is bigger, but they've got one more person on there.
That was my conversation from earlier with Tom Costello, Al Roker, and Steve Robinson. Now to President Trump's primetime address that he wrapped up just moments ago. The president making the case that U.S. airstrikes against Iran have been a success and that the war will end soon. Garrett Haake is at the White House with the latest from the president.
With gas prices now averaging more than $4 a gallon and rising, and polls showing a majority of Americans oppose the war, President Trump tonight making a rare formal address to the nation on the war with Iran.
Never in the history of warfare has an enemy suffered such clear and devastating large-scale losses in a matter of weeks.
President Trump tonight with an update on the U.S. military operation.
Their air force is gone. Their missiles are just about used up or beaten. Taken together, these actions will cripple Iran military, crush their ability to support terrorist proxies, and deny them the ability to build a nuclear bomb. Our armed forces have been extraordinary. I'm pleased to say that these core strategic objectives are nearing completion.
President Trump on how long the war will last.
We are on track to complete all of America's military objectives shortly, very shortly. We're going to bring them back to the Stone Ages where they belong.
CENTCOM says more than 12,000 Iranian regime targets have been struck so far. A U.S. official telling NBC News the military checklist for the war is almost complete. 13 U.S. service members have also died in the conflict. Tonight, all three stock market indices are up and oil prices tick downward. The president posting today that Iran's new leadership, quote, just asked the United States of America for a ceasefire. We will consider when Hormuz Strait is open, free, and clear. Until then, we are blasting Iran into oblivion. But the Iranian regime denies they requested a ceasefire and threatens the Strait of Hormuz will only be open for those who, quote, follow the new rules of Iran. And tonight, the president is also lashing out at NATO, suggesting the U.S. may pull out of the alliance after some members denied U.S. jets access to their bases, though Congress would have to approve any withdrawal. The president today saying, quote, they haven't been friends when we needed them. It's a one-way street.
Garrett joins us now live. Garrett, let's go back to the war with Iran. A big question still unanswered after tonight's speech. How will the Strait of Hormuz get back open to get oil and gas prices back down globally?
Yeah, Tom, the president basically washed his hands of the issue of the Strait tonight, saying that the United States imports relatively little through it and that countries who are more economically dependent on the Strait need to step up to clear it and, in his words, cherish it. Tom?
And that it would somehow open up naturally. All right, Garrett Haake first. Garrett, we thank you for that. Let's bring in Meet the Press moderator, Kristen Welker. Kristen, this speech critical for President Trump 1 month into this war, and you're already getting Republican and Democratic reaction. What are you hearing?
Well, Tom, President Trump's allies are saying what you would expect, largely praising his speech. Senator Lindsey Graham, for example, saying this is how you win in 32 days. But his critics stress there were no new details. And what Democrats and Republicans had said to me, Tom, going into tonight's speech, they wanted to hear a specific timeline and strategy for getting out of the war. So the outstanding questions: will the president put American troops on the ground in Iran? He didn't talk about that. He didn't close the door to that. Will he be able to complete his military objectives in 2 to 3 weeks? And what would the terms of a ceasefire agreement actually look like? Still a lot of unanswered and pressing questions, Tom.
Many polls show most Americans do not approve of the war, but most Republicans support it. Do you think this speech in any way helped the president move the needle with his base?
Well, it's not clear that this speech will move the needle because, again, there were no new significant details about the war. Polls show the president's MAGA base, as you say, Tom, is still firmly behind him. And yet there are cracks that are starting to form around the edges. So that is why, from the perspective of the president and the White House, this speech critical to Americans and keeping his base together, Tom.
All right, Chris and Welker, great to have you tonight. Earlier today, President Trump made history at the Supreme Court as the first sitting president to attend oral arguments. The case centers on one of his executive orders and if just being born in the U.S. makes someone a citizen. Here's Laura Jarrett.
President Trump appearing at the U.S. Supreme Court this morning to hear oral arguments on one of the most controversial moves of his immigration crackdown. His attendance for arguments a first for a sitting president. Mr. Trump seated in the front row as the justices, including conservatives he appointed, peppered the government's top lawyer with questions about the president's plan to end birthright citizenship, guaranteed under the Constitution to almost anyone born on U.S. soil.
How would it work? You're not going to know at the time of birth for some people whether they have the intent to stay or not.
Are you suggesting that when a baby is born, people have to have documents, present documents? Is this happening in the delivery room?
The Solicitor General emphasizing the president's executive order was aimed at curbing so-called birth tourism, the practice of traveling to give birth in the United States to guarantee citizenship for the baby.
We're in a new world now where 8 billion people are one plane ride away from having a child who's a U.S. citizen.
The Chief Justice pushing back.
Well, it's a new world. It's the same Constitution.
The president has called birthright citizenship a scam, accusing undocumented immigrants of taking advantage of rights under the 14th Amendment.
It wasn't meant for these children. It wasn't meant for people that escaped or invaded, came into our country illegally. It was meant for the children of slaves.
But the executive order signed on the first day of his second term has never gone into effect, repeatedly blocked in the lower courts. If allowed now, the order would only apply to babies born in the future, not retroactively. And the impact could be significant for an estimated 200,000 babies born each year.
And Laura, as we read the comments from the justices, what is this case really going to come down to?
Tom, based on today's questions, these justices seem to view the language of the 14th Amendment as clear, but they do have another path here. The key federal immigration law, the one from the 1950s, Tom, it essentially tracks the same language as the 14th Amendment. And so the justices could point to that as another way to say that the president's order has to be overturned because Congress wanted it that way. They wanted birthright citizenship, Tom.
And then, Laura, I guess the next question is, do we have a timeline here? What's your sense of when we could see a decision in this case?
Yeah, obviously the president would like to see it as soon as possible, given the fact that he took time out of his day to go there and present in the court today, Tom. But the justices don't seem to be in any rush here. They didn't put it on an expedited schedule. They didn't agree to hear it any faster than they would normally. And so we may not see a decision here until the end of June or even early July, as that's when the big cases of the term typically come out here, Tom.
All right, in summertime. Laura, we thank you for that. There are new developments tonight in the Tiger Woods DUI case. Today, the star golfer asked a judge for permission to leave the country for treatment. I'm joined now live by Jesse Kirsch. And Jesse, where does Tiger want to go?
Yeah, Tom, Tiger Woods wants to enter comprehensive inpatient treatment outside the U.S., and a Florida judge just gave the green light. In a new court filing today, the golfer's lawyer writes it is medically necessary for Woods to be treated in another country because in the U.S., his privacy has been repeatedly compromised. Woods was arrested Friday and charged with driving under the influence. He has since pleaded not guilty. Then last night, Woods issued a statement saying, "I know and understand the seriousness of the situation I find myself in." At this point, based on this latest filing, it's not clear exactly what kind of treatment Woods would be getting or where that would be happening. But we do know from the Masters that Woods will not be at the tournament in Augusta, Georgia next week. That is according to the tournament organizers. Tom.
All right, Jesse Kirsch with a lot of new reporting there for us. Jesse, we thank you. Now to the dramatic testimony in the trial of a Hawaii doctor accused of trying to kill his wife. His 19-year-old son telling the jury his father FaceTimed him right after the alleged attack. Here's Steve Patterson.
Tonight, the fallout from a courtroom bombshell.
I do.
Tuesday, 19-year-old Emil Koenig, Maui Dr. Gerhard Koenig's son from a previous marriage, testifying his father FaceTimed him immediately following the attack.
What did the defendant tell you during that call, as close to word for word as you can remember?
That he would not be making it back to Maui and to take good care of the younger kids, and that he had, that Ari, my stepmom, had been cheating on him, and that he tried to kill her.
Emil's testimony steady, stoic as his father looked on.
During that call, the next plan that he said was to jump off the cliff.
And how did you react to hearing that?
I told him not to.
Prosecutors say Koenig took his wife Ariel on a hike up this trail for her birthday last year. She testified he first attempted to push her off a cliff, then struck her repeatedly in the head with this rock, shown to the court last week.
He takes a deep breath, and then he just starts hitting my face and my head with a rock.
Tonight, the trial now in the hands of the defense, making the case it was in fact Ariel who started the scuffle. A forensic pathologist testifying the injuries look horrific, but don't line up with an attempt to kill.
The bone wasn't fractured. The brain wasn't injured. There was no bleeding around the brain, anything like that.
But the jury will also have to consider this, the last words of Dr. Koenig's son before he left the stand.
Is there any doubt in your mind about the defendant telling you he tried to kill Ariel?
No.
And Dr. Koenig is on the defense's witness list, set to be called following a lunch break somewhere within the next hour or so. Tom?
All right, Steve, we thank you. Now to an update on the upcoming trials for Luigi Mangione. Judges today pushed the start date for both the federal trial and the state trial to this fall. NBC News legal analyst Danny Savalos joins us. And Danny, explain why these judges moved the start dates and who does this benefit?
Well, we know why the federal judge did because we got some indication, and we know why the defendant asked for the moving of that date, because they would have to be going through jury questionnaires for one trial while the other trial is going on in state court. It's a little more uncertain why the state court judge, just hours later, moved the trial date, effectively creating the exact same problem. Overlapping trials, or at least trial prep, that now will likely need to be addressed. But overall, a minor win for the defense in pushing these off either way.
Danny, for people that are still getting up to speed on this case, since his first arrest, there was a lot of evidence that was seized. The defense trying to get some of that evidence tossed out. Before they head to trial, what kind of position is the defense in right now?
Right. So they've been trying to suppress essentially items found in a backpack when Luigi Mangione was arrested. And even if those items were suppressed, it doesn't mean the case goes away. It certainly weakens either case, the state or federal case. However, they still have lots of other evidence. For example, the video of the defendant allegedly shooting the healthcare CEO and a lot of other digital evidence that they would introduce even if this evidence was tossed. Although prosecutors on either side, state and federal, would want this evidence to remain in.
Danny Savalos with those updates for us. Danny, thank you. Now to a disturbing headline involving a rock legend. Fleetwood Mac guitarist Lindsey Buckingham was attacked when he showed up for an appointment in Santa Monica. Law enforcement sources say a woman threw an unknown substance on him when he entered the building. Buckingham was not injured. The woman is said to have stalked him several times before and is expected now to be arrested. And a cold case in Utah finally solved. Investigators now revealing the man who murdered 17-year-old Laura Ann Amy, notorious serial killer Ted Bundy. The teen disappeared on Halloween night in 1974. Her body found in a canyon 1 month later. Bundy confessed to her murder before his death, but that was before advanced DNA technology provided the definitive proof needed to close that case. Okay, and take a look at this absolute nightmare caught on camera at a Seattle commuter rail station. Surveillance video appears to show a man lurking behind a pole and then trying to push a commuter right onto the tracks as the train speeds into the station. The commuter is able to catch himself, but the alleged assailant tries to push him again. The would-be victim manages to get away. The suspect has now been arrested. We have some health news to tell you about tonight. The FDA approving a new GLP-1 that you can take orally. This one from drug maker Eli Lilly. Ann Thompson joins us now. And Ann, what do people need to know about this pill?
Tom, this is certainly good news for the people who don't like needles. The new pill is called Foundeo, and you can take it any time of day. And it is that ease of use that is expected to be a big selling point. Made by Eli Lilly, Foundeo is the second GLP-1 medicine to be sold in pill form. Unlike the Wegovy pill, you don't need to take it on an empty stomach and then avoid eating or drinking anything for a half hour. Though patients don't lose as much weight as they do with injectables, Foundeo will be cheaper. Cash customers will pay $149 a month for the starter dose and up to $349 a month for stronger doses. Tom?
And what about side effects from this new weight loss drug? Do we know anything about them?
Yeah, you still have the same old problems that you do with the injectables, nausea and gastrointestinal issues. So that hasn't been cleared up. Tom?
And you know, they always give you sort of a range of what the injections do versus the pills. How does this compare to Novo and to the injectable GLP-1s?
These are certainly more affordable and they are more convenient, but they are not as effective. The injectables will help you lose more weight and lose more weight faster. And what's interesting about the pill form, Tom, is that I spoke to the CEO of Eli Lilly, and he thinks these pills will actually be a way for people to maintain the weight they lost, and they will go from the injectables and then go to the pill form. Tom?
All right, Ann Thompson for us. Ann, we thank you for breaking it down. When we come back, we return to the moon. The Artemis crew poised to travel farther than any human ever has. A final thought from the Kennedy Space Center. That's next.
Integrity is 14 miles in altitude, 8 miles. Houston now controlling the flight of Integrity.
Tonight in the skies over us here in Florida and then Georgia and beyond, a reason to look up. For the first time in more than 50 years, man is headed to the moon, and America at the forefront of the new space race. Now, instead of the Soviets, the U.S. trying to get ahead of China, who is aiming to land on the moon by 2030. If Artemis II is successful, that could mean more missions, and maybe, just maybe, an American will walk on the moon once again in just 2 years. Some say that's too ambitious, an impossible timeline to hit. But we were reminded again today where man's ambition can take us. These 4 astronauts, 3 Americans and 1 Canadian, could head further into deep space than any other humans. The ultimate goal? Turning the moon into a new stop in the space frontier to help humans reach Mars, to ultimately answer the question we've all been asking. Are we alone? Mars could hold clues to answer that question. So tonight, the first step in a journey to the unknown, and we will be with Artemis II every click on that space odometer's way. Godspeed to them, and we can't wait to see the moon through their eyes. That's Nightly News for this Wednesday. I'm Tom Llamas. Thanks so much for watching. Tonight and always, we're here for you. Good night.